Welcome to the Inspire to Invest podcast, where we're sharing inspiring stories from business owners, entrepreneurs, and real estate investors on the pursuit of wealth and financial freedom. This episode of the Inspire to Invest podcast has been brought to you by the GeoFocus Group. Hey everybody, welcome to Inspire to Invest. I've got Ken Chung from fcube.ca here with me from Kelowna, British Columbia. He's got over 30 years of business experience, which all contributes to his excellent leadership skills, team collaboration, and hard work. Some of his accolades include induction into the Hall of Fame by companies such as Wealth Intelligence Academy and Yellow Pages, as well as numerous awards and recognitions in real estate. In addition to his real estate savvy, Ken's also very well known for his investment advice, asset protection strategies, and out-of-the-box thinking. He approaches every opportunity with enthusiasm and creative direction that results in real, definable, positive changes in his investors' personal and professional lives. So thank you so much for being here today. How are you?
Oh, I'm awesome. Thanks so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
So can you take me back to the beginning? Obviously, you've got this robust career in real estate, but where did this all kind of come into the picture with you in terms of being an entrepreneur and specifically in the real estate space?
Wow. Well, you're right. I've kind of always been an entrepreneur. I mean, I've had restaurants, et cetera, different businesses. But, one of the things my grandfather told me, he says, if you can ever buy the house next door, buy the house next door. And when we bought our first house in Kelowna, um, uh, there's some time down the road, but we had an opportunity to buy one at the end of the block. It wasn't next door, but it was close. And I always remembered that and some of the basics that picked up over time. And it was an opportunity to start something and put something aside for my family. And that's where it all started. So then I bought the one and then I learned a few things. So then I bought two at the same time. And then I realized, hey, you can buy more than one in a day. So then I bought three. And then all of a sudden within 2 years, I had 12 houses. It was crazy.
Yeah.
And then I learned something I didn't learn. A friend invited me to something. He says, "Hey, I went to this thing and I learned this, and I've got to go to this thing this weekend. I think you should come." And I said, "You did what? And paid how much?" And so I went down and I figured go with an open mind. You never know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot.
Yeah.
So that's what started it off.
Now, how are you financing that? Because I have found that a lot of investors start out, buying that first rental property, and then you realize very quickly that you can be capped out from the bank. So were you joint venturing with these, or like how are you buying them in the early days?
In the early days, it was same thing. I started on my own and put them in my name. And I bought some with my uncle, and then but most of it was just the two of us for a while for this fall. And we
Yeah.
had the same problem come up. And the first strategy I learned was to put them in companies. So when I was buying more properties, I put them in a corporation. I personally guaranteed the mortgage,
Yeah.
and because I'm only guaranteeing it, I'm not actually on the mortgage. And next thing you know, I bought 120 in 90 days the same way.
Yeah.
Until I get the phone call from the bank going, "Hey, we need to have a meeting. We need to figure out what you did and how you did it and why."
Yeah.
So that was fun.
What were they looking to understand then? Like, were you the first person that they dealt with that was buying that many properties that quickly?
Yeah, well, I mean, they said they never had anybody put, it was 78 mortgages with CIBC at the time, first line. It was through the mortgage broker division and understanding how I did it. I followed all the rules. It was just learning the rules. And they said, okay. So they wanted to know first how I did it, and I explained it. And then they went, okay, that makes sense. And we appreciate it, but it's a lot real fast. So we need to kind of just slow it down for a minute
Yeah.
and until we get establish a history with it. And they loved the business model. It was great, so they supported it throughout.
Yeah.
It was fabulous. And then I had to learn to be creative from there because that was my go-to bank at the
Yeah.
time. And I learned quickly that I like to leverage properties. I don't like to pay cash even though I could at that time. So I ended up going, okay, what do I do with these properties? And by default, I ended up wholesaling properties out because I was buying three or four a week at that point.
Yeah.
And so all my friends always wanted in on what I was doing, and they never wanted to go do the work. So because I had this machine running, I just started selling contracts off and wholesaling properties.
Yeah.
That became a whole different thing, and it was a whole lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah. That sounds awesome. Now, for someone that doesn't understand the concept of wholesaling, can you walk us through that process and, how you took advantage of
Sure.
that?
Wholesaling is really just picking up something at a good deal or one that makes sense. And then really at the time, I was just assigning the contracts off. And I had a network of investors who like cash flowing properties. And because I did a short sheet on, I call it Tim Hortons math, and I handed that out. I sent it out by email, and people either liked the deal or they didn't. And then they would purchase a contract from me and I would sign it over.
Yeah.
There's some rules and all the things you have to do with it. And I made sure I followed all those and everybody was in compliance with it. But it worked out really well because I knew the market. I think that was
Yeah.
one of the biggest things. There's a lot of people who wholesale but don't know the market that they're wholesaling from.
Yeah.
But I had the experience there, and that really gave the comfort and security to the people that were buying them because they also got my network
Yeah.
of people, that my power team that was running them and doing everything.
Yeah.
Because it's not always easy to be an away landlord.
Yeah, yeah, I can
Hmm.
understand that. Now, I know that somewhere along the way you shifted over into commercial. So can you talk about that transition from the single family homes and wholesaling into larger properties and opportunities?
Yeah, well, when I bought all those properties, a lot of it was with private money. And I was paying a fair interest rate at the time. It was 15-20% for people on an annual basis. And my cash flow was really well. I did really well with a lot of properties and renovated, et cetera, brought values up. I was able to return everybody's money and I went to give it back and nobody wanted it back. It was kind of weird. They, no, I enjoy the interest. It's okay. Keep it. Go find something else to do. So I said, okay, well, because I was in that limit with the single family homes, I'd learned about commercial and commercial qualifying on its own merit. So
Yeah,
on its own cash flow and its own values. And if I could improve it and give it some lift and gain some additional value there, it really went well with the banks. So that's how I started buying commercial buildings. And it's funny, I bought a meat, I don't know what you call it. It's like a butcher, and he would do his own meat smoking in the back. It was one of the first commercial buildings I bought. And then I bought a trailer park, and then bought a big 50,000 square foot warehouse and turned it indoor heated storage in Winnipeg,
yeah,
which was never heard of at the time. Turns out, actually, it was the original dairy farm
yeah.
with a cattle walk going up 5 stories. It was
Oh,
fun. It
wow.
was a lot of fun. Yeah.
That's really
History.
interesting. Now, obviously I'm sure there's been some hiccups along the way. So can you talk about some of the challenges that you've also experienced and maybe what's one of the bigger obstacles that you faced?
Wow. Yeah, there's hiccups. I mean, if you don't experience it in real estate, you're really probably not doing it. The challenges that come are always going to be there. The thing is to be prepared and have a power team. When I first started, where my error was, if you will, was because I was growing really fast. I didn't have enough of my power team in play in the beginning. And then I trusted a lot of people with probably a lot less information than I could have had or done more due diligence on. And that was costing me. I mean, I had some property managers stealing five or $10,000 a month, and then I moved to one who embezzled 500,000 and left me with a huge hydro debt. So there's a lot of those things. I mean, I had hostile takeovers. There's a lot of different things in there, and it's really about being prepared, making sure that you have a good legal team behind you as well.
Yeah,
Every deal is unique and different. You and I might do a deal today, and I learned from that how to go into the deals and go into it with a different perspective that we're friends or acquaintances. Let's do this deal. Great. Let's also make sure that we're all protected in the way we do it, just
yeah,
to be fair, because you never know what happens. It might be something out of your or my control that
yeah,
really impacts us.
yeah,
And so having that power team probably ahead of time would have been
yeah,
helpful. And that really probably was my biggest obstacle. So
yeah.
but getting that sorted out after the fact was good, but it was a huge lesson.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that always surprises me when I talk to different people. And in some instances, they didn't have things on paper, whether that's partnership agreements or appropriate contracts and stuff like that. And I think the other thing is just always making sure that you do have independent representation when you are kind of going into that, because you just never know if there's already a lawyer involved, like if your interests are appropriately protected. And also with appraisals, even getting your own independent appraisals and things like that. So I think there's definitely something to be said, even if it's an extra $1,000 or how whatever it is. Like it's better to be front loaded
That's right.
yourself, because if you don't on the back end, it could be far more costly.
Absolutely. I was actually having the same conversation yesterday with a couple of friends here, and they were saying, well, my accountant and my lawyers didn't think I need to do all this corporate structure yet. And I said, I understand why they would think that way, but they may not see what's coming in the future for you. And to make those changes later could be far more costly than if you did them now. And
Yeah.
doing them now, even though there's a small cost to maintain and to set it up, it's well worth doing ahead of time so that you have the proper structure. I
Yeah.
remember when I bought all those houses in the beginning, I didn't do the structure the way I should have. And it's because I was taught the way to do it. And then they said, always talk to local support, find your
Yeah.
local lawyer, find your local team. And that lawyer advised me, says, you don't need that yet. But neither one of us knew I was going to go buy 120 houses in 90 days.
Yeah.
So I should have set up the structure properly in the beginning. Because when I went to look at fixing it later, I was looking at about $250,000 expense.
Wow.
So yeah, so I had decided to liquidate the portfolio and move those things out. And when I was, and I did set up the structure properly at that point so that everything new was going into it.
Yeah.
And and I wish I had done that in the beginning like I was taught.
Yeah. Yeah, I can
Yeah,
understand that. I mean, you don't necessarily always know like how far you're going to take something, right? And I think that's important to just reassess it at different phases. Like, to go from zero properties to a couple hundred, like that's a big jump, but maybe every 10, 25, or 50 properties, like reassess what you have going on. And if you do need to make changes, then it might be more digestible at those points in time and maybe not get
absolutely.
too far ahead of yourself. Now, in terms of things like successes, what would you say is something that you're most proud of?
I think one of the biggest things that came out of this for me when even from the beginning was learning what a win-win-win was. I
Yeah.
don't like win-loses. Somebody losing in a deal isn't a good thing. It's not a good feeling. And being able to make a difference for people in their lives is huge.
Yeah.
I did about a dozen rent to owns for people. There was only one that didn't go the way it was supposed to go, and
Yeah.
some people just get in their own way. However, being able to help people through that process and see them get back into the market or get into it in the first place because they never had the opportunity
Yeah.
was a really good feeling. And some of those successes were huge. But probably the biggest success is I once bought 10 fourplexes with a partner of mine, and they were in the worst street. If you had ever called up and said, well, where's the address? And you told them the address, they'd probably hang up on you. Right. And the reason I bought them was because they were all in the same street.
Yeah.
And I learned early that if you want to make a change in the neighborhood, buy the whole neighborhood.
Yeah.
So that's sort of the mentality I went with buying these 10 fourplexes. And I also um, coordinated with a bunch of the other homeowners that were either living there or investing there and
Yeah.
let them know what I was doing. We bought them and we probably put in 150% of what we paid for it to do the renovations and
Yeah.
and change it around and put in decent clients and renters so that they were maintained well and taken care of.
Yeah.
And I hired the best property manager in the city at the time, and it was amazing. And even the other property owners started using him too.
Yeah.
Him and his wife did a fabulous job for us. But we were able to create housing for people that felt safe in their neighborhood, felt
Yeah.
felt comfortable in it, and it was affordable. It was a great deal.
Yeah.
In fact, one of the people who grew up in that city had moved away to Vancouver and was an accountant, actually got hold of my realtor that I bought it from and made me an unsolicited offer that we just couldn't say no to.
Yeah.
And the fact that somebody else home was going to retire there and take care of it and be part of their community, that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, on that note, we're
Yeah.
just going to take a really brief break for a word from our sponsors, and we'll be right back.
Whether you are launching your first development or shifting your portfolio into the missing middle, land development and construction come with challenges. The GeoFocus Group helps you navigate those challenges with clarity, structure, and confidence. With decades of experience managing complex builds, turning around stalled projects, and recovering timelines and budgets, our team is trusted by an extensive roster of developers and investors. Today, we bring that same level of precision to the growing purpose-built rental market, helping both new and experienced developers succeed in delivering needed housing. We support your project from the earliest stages of acquisition and due diligence through zoning, site plan approvals, and permit submissions. Checks. With purpose-built rentals becoming a key part of long-term housing strategy in communities of all sizes, the need for experienced project leadership is greater than ever.
Thanks again for following along with this episode of Inspired to Invest. In addition to real estate, investing, and running my own brand experience agency for 18 years, I also published a book. called The Accidental Entrepreneur in October of 2021. This is my story, and it chronicles how I turned tragedy into triumph to embrace my destiny in entrepreneurship. If you're interested in picking up a copy, you can find the link at serenahomesrealtor.com, and you can also find my link tree with all of the retailers in the details below. Thanks again for your support. Inspired to Invest is proud to support the Beyond Success program. In today's complex world, it's absolutely crucial for our youth to learn how to take charge of their financial future. We believe that every young person deserves access to accurate, practical financial information. Designed to bridge the gap, the Beyond Success program leverages a comprehensive educational bootcamp to equip young minds with essential financial literacy skills. At Beyond Success, it's not just about teaching financial literacy, it's also about fostering a foundation for a prosperous and empowered future. Join us. Together we can build a brighter financial future for the next generations. Join us. Together we can build a brighter financial future for the next generations. Hey everybody, welcome back to Inspired to Invest. I've got Ken Chung here with me today from Kelowna, BC, and we're talking about his robust career in real estate that spanned a few decades at this point in time. And one fun question that I always like to ask people is, what's one of the craziest things that you've ever experienced in real estate?
Oh, wow. Craziest. There's a lot of things that I could tell you stories that were unbelievable, and most of them are negative. And I don't always like to go there with it. So I'm going to stay away from that one today. But the craziest things were being able to negotiate deals that, just because I thought outside of the box and I was able to talk to the sellers directly,
Yeah.
made it so much easier. I once had, so I went into, okay, so one of the craziest things we did, I went into Winnipeg and I called up a couple of realtors, but I had one that was willing to meet with me, and it was over a Friday night. And I said that, and I need a property manager, and you guys meet me at the hotel. And my business partner that went out with me, we did our own things, but we did some stuff together. We put in 147 offers that weekend.
Wow.
And yeah, we ended up buying three of them the following couple of weeks because we found the sellers that were willing to talk to us. And funny enough, the first one I ever bought was on a credit card. I mean, it was $17,000.
Wow.
And I know, and then I put 2,300 into fixing it, reappraised at 29,000, financed at 75%, doing all the conventional things, and I was still cash flowing $900 a month, and I got all my money out and paid my credit card off, and it was infinite return on my money,
Yeah.
and that was fun. But putting those offers in, it was an amazing experience. And since then, I will tell you that the biggest, the most amazing experiences I pull out of real estate is expanding my network. Everywhere I go, I meet new people who have a drive and a passion for real estate. And usually it's to make a difference, something that really is important and passionate to them. And the best part of what I do is, because of the way I think, I get asked to collaborate a lot and work with different deals with people.
Yeah.
And I get to help people realize those dreams. So that's really cool as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, earlier you talked a little bit about education and going to an event where you learned a lot. So on that note, what would you say is some of the best advice that you've gained over the last 30 years?
Wow. Go into every opportunity to be educated with an open mind. There's a lot of networks and groups that I've involved and belonged to and been invited to. I don't always go because of the content of what it is, but rather go to meet people there that are like-minded individuals. And you always find a few. We kind of naturally gravitate to each other.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty cool thing. So growing my network. In the beginning, when I took all my training, I learned about land syndication, apartment conversion, condos out of warehouses, creative financing, asset protection. I learned all of these things, and the company trained. No, unfortunately, that company is no longer around.
Yeah.
And I don't see people that teach all of that. So getting the opportunities whenever you can to go in and get, even if you get one piece of advice that can make a difference in something you do, it was worth going. And people say, well, do you really find it worth it? Sometimes it's not the content, because it's not the content for me. It's the connections of the people that I meet that make a huge difference in the things I want to do or be able to help somebody else achieve.
Yeah.
That to me is worth. Being educated is huge, and knowing how to apply that is huge. One of the biggest differences, actually, from an educational standpoint, is I go to these events. I go to the trainings that people say, "Hey, you got to come learn this," or somebody's doing something. I always go check it out, because if I get that one piece of information that makes a difference, that's huge. Whether it helps me or somebody else, it
Yeah.
makes a big difference. And so I always go with an open mind, and then I enjoy the overflow, the people that I meet, the connections that I have. I've made some huge friendships with people all over the world
Yeah.
because I go to these things,
Yeah.
and that's a big difference. That education is a big part,
So
you
with
know.
everything that you've done, like what would you say is next for you? Like what kind of projects are you looking for right now? Like do you feel like you're comfortable where things are at, or are you still looking for the next best deal?
No, well, I'm always looking at deals, but I'm in a different place in my life now. I mean, back then when I was building the empire, I didn't know how much was enough. And you have your rise and your fall and things, and I went through and I lost a lot. And what I learned through that process was how much is enough, right? And for my family and myself, I'm very fortunate. I have an amazing wife and two boys that are not young anymore, and they're adulting, and that's all entertaining in itself. However, a lot of people went through the tough times and didn't come out with their family intact. I'm very fortunate that I still have that. And that's been my rock and my support through everything that I've gone through.
Yeah.
I had the massive portfolio. I no longer desire a massive portfolio. And if I do desire to have real estate, it'd be commercial. But where I'm at now in my life, I'm older, and I'm trying to get to that point of being able to retire again. So for me, it's about building, a fund, if you will, an opportunity fund, so that I can go in and out of deals that, I find worthy of going in and out of, so that I can build that retirement fund, that, because I know that if I pass, my wife would not want to deal with real estate, and she would probably just sell it off anyway. So I'm going to create a fund, or a capital fund, that will help me build that retirement fund for myself. And at the
Yeah.
same time, people that are in that fund are going to benefit from the transactions, and we'll all grow together. So that'll be a good thing. So that's where I'm focused now. And because of that, I end up in all these amazing situations. Like right now, I'm in Denison, Texas. I've
Yeah.
never been here. And it's because I meet people, because I'm willing to connect. And I get invited to participate in real estate deals that I would never thought of sometimes, because they like how I think, and that they need to collaborate in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
So that's exciting. So right now I still do all kinds of deals. Right now I'm doing infill fourplexes where I live in Kelowna, because that's what's can be done and needs to be done. We
Yeah.
don't have enough housing for sure. So I'll make a difference with that. So I'm always looking, like I'm doing land development down here in Texas with these guys.
Yeah.
So you just never know.
Yeah. No, it's huge. I feel like there's a lot of people that are so attracted to that market. Now, for
Yeah.
someone that's just starting out, what kind of wisdom would you want to pass along to them?
Oh, goodness gracious. The best thing and I always tell people this story, when I started learning, I didn't know how to implement. I could learn it. So the best thing I ever did was I hired myself a mentor. And that mentor actually had rewritten all of the Canadian content for this company from the US that wanted to have their offices up there.
Yeah.
And so I went straight to the source, and I hired him as my mentor. We've now been friends for 25 years. And it was, he came between Christmas and New Year's holiday and spent the time to do the mentoring with me and my business partner at the time. And that was the launching point, if you will, because from the next week for the next 90 days, I bought 120 houses,
Yeah.
right? And it was having access to that resource, that support. So I myself, about 15, 18 years ago, I actually started doing mentoring on a as needed basis. I don't do it a lot. It's very specific cases if I do it, but because I like to be able to give back and
Yeah.
make a difference for others, um, I do some mentorings now too. But anything you can do, I don't care if it's me or somebody else, find yourself a mentor, hire one. You know, Even around here where I'm visiting with my friend, he is part of an old boys club. Now he's a young guy. He's got a lot younger than me, but he hangs out with all these guys in their 70s, 80s, and 90s. I met them the other day, and they do this coffee group, but they know a lot, so much, and they're passing that on to somebody else, because they care.
Yeah.
And he sees all of these as his mentors. So whichever way you can acquire mentorship,
Yeah.
that support, find it.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. Now, obviously, the name of this podcast is Inspired to Invest. So I always like to ask if you have a particular quote that motivates or inspires you.
I say do everything that you're going to do with intent because it will always make you think about the both sides, the pros and cons of it, and what the potential outcomes can be.
Yeah.
But do it with intent, and if you do it that way, it typically comes from the heart, and that makes a huge difference in anything you do.
Yeah.
So I also say, live life, play full out, and make a difference. No matter what you're gonna do make a difference.
Now, for anyone that's watching or listening, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
Simplest, go to kenchung.ca or drop me an email at ken@kenchung, CHUNG.ca.
So we'll include that in the show notes below. Of course, thank you for taking time out of your day, especially since you are traveling to be with us. And for anyone that is watching or listening, we appreciate your time as well. If you have enjoyed this episode, make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe below. And you're following along on social at Inspired to Invest Podcast.
I like all your previous podcasts. I did what you said and I liked it, but I found it more interesting when I went back and I saw all the ones you had, and I was like, oh my goodness, I got to watch that one. Oh my goodness, I got to watch that one. And
Yeah.
there's such good podcasts. You have some great people on your
Oh, thank
podcast.
you.
It's awesome.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And obviously, at the end of the day, it's really just trying to pass along that motivation and pearls of wisdom to people that are just getting started or they're trying to scale and they're trying to figure out the lay of the land. So, in closing, I always like to leave with people when you invest in yourself, the sky's the limit. Thank you to the GeoFocus Group for bringing you this episode of Inspired to Invest. The views represented on this podcast are for general information only and does not constitute investment or other professional advice or an offering of securities. The host and guests featured on Inspired to Invest make no representations as to the performance of any particular investment. Should you decide to make an investment, you are responsible for conducting your own review and analysis. It is recommended that you obtain independent legal, accounting, and tax advice from licensed professionals.